Some places have a way of holding on to secrets, places where the past feels alive, and something unseen lingers just beneath the surface. I never believed in haunted houses or ghosts, until my family moved into an old, forgotten house in the woods. At first, it was just an old house, nothing more. But then I started noticing things that didn't add up. I never thought a simple doll in the attic could change everything. The night I realized this house wasn't as empty as it seemed, that's when fear really settled in. And the truly terrifying question: what if the things we bring into our homes aren't just objects, but something more? Tonight we're diving into true haunted places horror stories that actually happened. So stick close and keep watching till the end to find out what happened before it was too late. But before we start, make sure to subscribe or follow so you never miss any new chilling releases. If you're enjoying the content, hit like, drop a comment, and share this video. Let's see how many of you truly love this kind of episodes. Now here's your challenge. One of the stories you're about to hear might not be real. It could be completely made up. Or maybe all of them are true. Watch till the end. Try to spot the fake, and leave your guess in the comments. And as for last episode's fake story, it was story number 3. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And now, let's dive into the darkness together. I've never really talked about what happened in that old house, not in detail anyway. Part of me still struggles to wrap my head around it. Growing up, my family wasn't exactly the superstitious type. Ghost stories were just stories, meant to scare kids into behaving. But after what I experienced at 11, I'm honestly not sure what else to call it. When my dad lost his job, everything fell apart fast. The city apartment, the friends, the school, gone. Mom found a tiny run-down house deep in the woods, just outside a town no one ever talked about. The rent was cheap enough to be suspicious, but we were desperate. Driving up the narrow dirt path, I remember gripping the car door, watching the trees crowd in closer with every turn. The house sat at the edge of the forest, half swallowed by shadows. It looked like something from a nightmare, peeling white paint, shuttered windows staring like dark, empty eyes, and a porch with floorboards so rotten they groaned beneath my footsteps. Mom tried to keep us positive, but even she looked pale and tired. Dad barely spoke the whole trip, staring out the window like he could disappear into the trees. Inside was worse. The air smelled damp and stale, thick with dust and something else I couldn't name. It felt like the house was holding its breath. The layout was strange. Narrow hallways twisted around like a maze, and some doors opened to reveal empty walls or crumbling closets. The wooden floors creaked loudly, and light barely filtered through the grimy windows, even on the sunniest days. The attic staircase was hidden behind a crooked kitchen cupboard. It was a tiny, narrow ladder that led to a cramped space beneath the sagging roof. Mom forbade us to go up there. She said it wasn't safe, but curiosity got the better of me. That's where we found her. At first I thought it was a child sitting in the corner, shivering in the dark. But as I edged closer, my breath caught. It was a doll. Porcelain, cracked, with tangled blonde curls, and a faded white dress stained with dust and time. Her glass eyes reflected the faint attic light. But they weren't just glass. They watched me. Emily, my little sister, hated it from the start. She was 9 and immediately said it gave her nightmares, even though she'd barely looked at it. We all agreed not to touch the doll. It stayed in the attic, an unspoken threat hanging in the stale air. The first night I heard footsteps above my room, soft, slow, pacing back and forth. I told myself it was just the old house settling, or maybe some raccoon caught inside. But the footsteps kept coming, every night around 2 or 3 a.m., dragging a chill I couldn't shake. Then the giggling started, faint at first, like children playing hide-and-seek just beyond the shadows. I'd strain to listen, heart pounding, but whenever I blinked, it stopped. One morning, the attic door was wide open. I was sure I'd shut it the night before. Mom swore she hadn't touched it. From then on, We locked the attic door before bed, but that didn't stop the strange happenings. At first, it was small things. The doll facing the window instead of the door. Then a few feet closer to the stairs. One morning, I woke to find her sitting perfectly still at the bottom step, like she'd climbed down during the night. Mom thought it was a prank. She looked at Emily and me like we were making it up. But Emily refused to go near the attic, shaking her head so hard it looked like she might cry. Lights flickered, appliances beeped for no reason, and the hallway lights turned on by themselves. Mom called an electrician. The wiring was fine. One night I woke frozen, paralyzed by a cold heavier than fear. The doll sat at the foot of my bed, but she looked different. Her cracked cheek was smooth, her dress white again, and her smile, too wide, too knowing. Her eyes glowed faintly red, like embers behind glass. I couldn't look away. I swear she reached out her hand. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke, she was gone. Desperate, Mom called a local woman who collected folklore and old records. The woman arrived with candles and old books, her face pale and lined with worry. She told us the house had a dark past. A girl named Margaret had lived there in the 1940s. Sick and alone, Margaret locked herself in the attic, refusing to come down until she died. The doll was hers, a vessel of her pain and anger. The woman shared stories of the doll passing through families, leaving destruction behind. One family fled overnight, another's house burned to the ground. We planned to leave at dawn, bags packed, hearts heavy, but the car wouldn't start. The front door wouldn't budge. Emily screamed upstairs, her voice raw. "There's someone in the mirror," she whispered, eyes wide with terror. That night, we huddled in one room, praying. Just past midnight, the power cut out. The house plunged into suffocating darkness. In the silence, I heard it, the rocking chair. Slow, deliberate creaking. Then laughter, cold and cruel, creeping into my bones. When the lights flickered back on, the doll sat in the middle of the living room floor, facing us. Her smile was gone. We left the next morning, not even bothering to lock the door. Years later, I still dream about that doll. I wake up feeling watched, shadows flickering just beyond sight. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear the rocking chair creaking, just beyond where I can see. And I know she's still waiting. I've never been the type to scare easily. Ghosts, demons, haunted hotels. I always thought those were just stories people tell when they don't understand what's really going on. But what happened to me a few years ago in an old hotel still haunts my mind. I don't know how to explain it, and believe me, I've tried. It started on a solo road trip across the US, the kind where you pack light and drive until you get tired, no real destination in mind. I was chasing the feeling of being somewhere completely unknown, places most people drive past without a second glance. One evening, after hours on the road, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and fading gold. I was somewhere in the Midwest, or at least I think I was. The town was tiny, just a blinking neon sign and a stretch of cracked pavement. I can't name it because I don't remember its name. It's like the place itself was made to be forgotten. There was a single hotel, an old relic that looked like it hadn't seen a remodel since the 60s. Its neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a sickly green glow on the cracked concrete. A vacancy sign winked at me, and I was too tired to debate whether to keep driving. Inside, the lobby smelled like stale smoke and faded dreams. The carpet was threadbare, patterned with colors that had long since lost their brightness. An elderly man sat behind the front desk, his face creased like weathered leather. He didn't say much, just handed me a heavy brass key fob and nodded toward the elevator. The place felt empty. No other guests, no voices, just the distant hum of the vending machine. The hallway to the elevator was narrow, walls yellowed and peeling. The elevator itself was a box of metal and memories, narrow, with a scissor gate that clanged shut behind me, and a flickering light overhead that threatened to go out. I pressed the button for the second floor. My room was supposed to be there, but the elevator didn't stop. It climbed past 3, 4, then 5. Floors not on the directory in the lobby, floors I'd never heard of. The numbers on the panel started changing too. Strange symbols that looked like ancient runes, shifting and twisting, almost hypnotic. I laughed nervously, trying to brush off the unease curling in my stomach. "Of course the elevator's haunted," I muttered, forcing a smile. But the light flickered harder, the metal groaned, and the elevator slowed to a stop. The doors creaked open, revealing a hallway that made my blood run cold. This wasn't the hotel. The walls were cracked and stained, dark marks pooling near the baseboards like dried blood. The carpet was threadbare, nearly colorless, as if the life had been sucked out of it. A single dim bulb flickered erratically, barely illuminating a corridor that stretched endlessly into darkness. There were no doors, no signs, just a corridor that seemed to swallow sound and light. I should have stayed inside the elevator. I should have pressed the button, screamed for help, done anything but step out. But something, curiosity, or maybe something darker, pulled me forward. The air was thick and heavy, the smell of rot and mold overwhelming. I swallowed hard and called out, "Hello?" My voice bounced back, hollow and empty. That silence wasn't just quiet. It pressed against my skin like cold water. I turned to retreat, but the elevator doors had already slammed shut behind me. The panel above was now a blank black screen. No buttons, no numbers, just void. Panic surged. I hammered the call button, desperate, but nothing happened. I was trapped. I moved down the corridor, heart pounding. Around the corner, an even older elevator sat, its doors rusty and barely closed, as if something inside was trying to escape. Then came the whispers. Low, layered murmurs just beyond comprehension. Not words, but sounds like distant conversations overlapping. Urgent, restless. I froze. The hairs on my arms stood on end. The whispers grew louder, almost mocking. I stumbled back, nearly falling. Then I saw it. A faint glow from beneath a cracked panel in the wall. A symbol burned into the plaster. It wasn't any language I recognized, but it pulsed softly, as if alive. I reached out, trembling, and the whispers stopped instantly. The silence that followed was deafening. I ran back down the hall, feeling the walls closing in. Just when I thought the corridor would never end, I saw the elevator again. The call button glowed with an eerie blue light. I didn't hesitate. The doors opened, cold air rushing out like a sigh of relief. I dove inside and slammed the button for the second floor. The elevator jolted and began its descent. The numbers ticked down, changing from those strange symbols back to familiar digits. When the doors opened, I was back in a normal hotel hallway. Beige wallpaper, a humming vending machine at the end, the faint scent of cleaning supplies. It was like I'd never left, but I had. That night, sleep was a stranger. Every shadow in the room seemed to twitch and breathe. Every creak in the walls was a whisper. I kept thinking of that symbol, pulsing just out of reach, and the voices trying to reach me. The next morning, I went to the front desk to ask about the strange floor, the old elevator, anything. But the old man was gone. In his place was a young woman who avoided my gaze and hurriedly handed me my bill. I left without a word. Years later, I still don't know what that floor was, or why I was drawn there. I've told myself it was a hallucination, a trick of a tired mind. But the symbol, the pulsing symbol, is burned into my memory, like a scar. And sometimes, when the lights flicker late at night, I hear the whispers again, waiting. I never used to believe in anything paranormal. Ghosts, spirits, the afterlife, all of it seemed like movie nonsense to me. I was 16 in 1999, going to school during the week and working weekend shifts at a fast food place. My life was about as ordinary as it gets. No one in my family had ever mentioned anything supernatural. We just weren't that kind of people. It was a Sunday morning like any other. My parents and my 11-year-old sister, Chloe, were heading out of town for the day to visit relatives. I had to stay behind because I was scheduled to work at 11 a.m. My usual routine was simple. Wake up, flick on the radio, get dressed, eat, then head out. Back then, radios weren't digital. I had one of those analog ones with a dial. My go-to was FM Midland Radio 103. That morning, I tuned it in like always, let the music play while I got dressed, then headed downstairs to an empty house. All normal. Work was uneventful. I finished around 6 p.m. and walked home thinking I'd be greeted by the sounds of my family returning. But the house was still dead quiet. No lights on, no voices, nothing. I went straight upstairs to shower and change out of my greasy uniform. When I got to my room, I instinctively reached over and turned the radio back on. Same dial, same spot. But instead of the usual station, it just hissed at me. Hard static. I turned the knob back and forth, thinking maybe Chloe had messed with it. She liked pulling little pranks like that. I didn't think much of it. About 5 minutes later, I heard the front door open downstairs. Then clear as day, I heard Chloe's voice. She was talking loudly, almost sing-songy, like she was calling for me. "Hello? Are you home already?" Her tone was off. The way she stretched the words, slow, like she was trying too hard to sound cheerful, made my stomach twist. I figured my parents must have dropped her off first. I didn't bother going down. I was tired and didn't really feel like dealing with her hyper energy. Then, the front door opened again. This time, I heard both my parents coming in, talking to each other. That's when I got up and went downstairs, assuming the whole gang was home. But when I asked where Chloe was, they looked at me funny. My mom said, "We dropped her at Emily's place before coming back. She's not here." I just stood there, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I heard her come in 5 minutes ago. She was literally downstairs. I heard her voice." They both looked genuinely concerned, not like they were messing with me, more like I had said something that scared them a little. My dad even checked the house, just to be sure. But of course, no one else was there. That moment stuck with me. It was the first time in my life I felt like reality might be off. I didn't know it then, but it wouldn't be the last. In the weeks that followed, things started happening. Small, almost ignorable at first, things you could explain away if you wanted to. I'd be lying in bed at night and see quick flashes in the corner of my vision, like someone walking past the door, even though it was closed. Shadows shifted across my walls with no source. I told myself it was headlights from a distant road, or wind in the trees. But my bedroom window only had a narrow gap in the curtain, and it faced the backyard. Pitch black most nights, no street lamps, and I was on the second floor. There was no way any outside light could reach that far in. The TV in my room began turning on by itself, always to a blank channel, always full volume. Once, I came home from school and found my Walkman playing, even though I'd taken the batteries out days earlier. The tape inside had rewound itself and was stuck in a loop of garbled noise, like someone had taped over it with whispering. I threw it in the trash. Then came the dreams. Night after night, I'd see that same hallway. Not mine, not anywhere I recognized. Long and dimly lit, with walls that seemed to breathe in and out like lungs. At the end of the hall, there was a door. I never made it to that door. I'd always wake up just as my hand reached for the knob. I started sleeping with the hallway light on. I told myself it was just teenage stress or exhaustion from work, but I couldn't shake the sense that something had shifted in the house, something that was aware of me now. Then, every night as I drifted into that hazy moment between waking and sleep, I'd feel it, a deep, internal buzzing, like my entire body was vibrating from the inside out, not shaking, more like resonating. I'd jolt awake, heart pounding, gasping for air. This happened almost nightly for weeks. One evening, I woke to the sound of scratching from inside the wall. Not like a mouse, but long, deliberate scraping. 3 claws. I counted them. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. I told myself I was imagining it, but I started leaving notes for myself. "You're not crazy." You heard it again. "Keep track." By that point, I was barely sleeping. constantly anxious and feeling like I was slipping. Then, one night, it all came to a head. There were no shadows that night, no dreams. I had turned the TV off, determined to get some rest. I rolled onto my left side, and that's when I saw her. She wasn't like anything from a horror movie. No blood, no violence. She was faint, a greenish, translucent figure hovering beside my bed. I could see through her, but the outline was unmistakable. A tall woman, long limbs, hands too large for her frame, fingers too long. Her face was smeared, not blurry, but wrong, like someone had tried to paint over her expression with dirty water. She didn't move. She just hovered there, watching me. I couldn't even breathe. My entire body locked up. I stared at her fingers, just the fingers, and pulled the pillow over my face. I whispered the Our Father prayer over and over again. I think I said it 30, maybe 40 times, until I passed out from pure fear or exhaustion. When I woke up, the room felt different, lighter, like the air had cleared. I never saw her again after that night. The buzzing stopped. The dreams faded. Even the TV stopped turning on by itself. We'd moved into that house in 1996. It was built in the 50s by a woman named Mrs. Slater, who'd raised her family there. I never thought much of it. It was just an old house. Years later, I was having a late-night talk with my mom in the kitchen. I finally brought it up, how I'd felt so alone during all of that, and how no one had believed me. To my surprise, she went quiet. Then she told me something that floored me. Once, while she was cleaning my room, an ashtray flew off the shelf and shattered against the wall. Not dropped, launched. Right after that, the plastic thermostat cover on the radiator popped off and hit her in the back. She said she tried to ignore it, but there were other things too, like whispering voices calling her name at night. Helen. Always the same voice. Calm, but insistent. She never told anyone. She thought she was losing her mind. At one point she said she lay in bed and whispered, "Just kill me and get it over with." That shook me to my core. I wasn't crazy. Something had been in that house. We had another talk last summer. I asked her if anything else had happened. She nodded and said that just a few months earlier, the electric shower turned on by itself. Now, this wasn't just flipping a switch. You had to turn on the wall power and a separate dial on the unit. Somehow, both engaged. Full blast. She ran next door to the neighbors. She also mentioned a sound in the attic, like someone had dropped a massive suitcase directly above her bed. The attic hatch was tiny. No ladder. No access. No one else in the house. I don't live there anymore. But whenever I visit, especially if I stay overnight, I still leave the lights on in that room. I don't even try to sleep in the dark. And I've noticed something else. That old analog radio, the one I always used to listen to, it still sits on the dresser in that room. Every time I try to turn it on, even after replacing the batteries, it just plays static. Same dial, same spot, just static. I don't know what's in that house, but I know it watches, it listens, and sometimes it mimics the people you trust most. If you've made it to the end of this video, let me know in the comments which story creeped you out the most, and if you could survive only one of them, which one would it be? Don't forget to drop your guess. Which story do you think was the fake one? Also, if you enjoyed the episode, hit super thanks if you're on YouTube, or send us some stars if you're on Facebook to show some love and make your comments stand out. Want to go next level? Get early access to upcoming episodes, exclusive members-only content, and much more by joining our YouTube membership or becoming a Patreon supporter. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's waiting there for you. Don't forget to like, share, and catch up on our previous episodes. And now, stay tuned for the next horror episode.